Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Flourish preview webinar before we formally launch next week at the CIPD exhibition in Olympia. And welcome to the Flourish Revolution. I'd just like to introduce you now to the three of us that are going to be leading you through the webinar this afternoon. So, Jeff, if you'd like to start off.
Yes, hello everybody, and it's wonderful to be online with you all. My name's Jeff Gordon. You can see the guy at the top with the red nose. I've got a background in community theatre, having spent many years giving people voice to express certain social aspects to their lives and personal stuff. Moved on to theatre and education. I worked with use of theatre in education, allowing people to express different educational ideas. Moved on then to the corporate world, working with acting in different ways and the ability to be able to play your roles more effectively at work. This was a very important and effective course that I ran, including presentation skills, using a number of theatre art skills. As you see all the way through, I've been a clown professionally as well. When I was running clowning workshops, I was noticing the therapeutic effects it was having. I moved on to clowning in hospitals. Clowning hospitals then became something very important in recognising health issues, and 70% of health issues are concerned with stress. So combining everything I've been doing up to now in the health aspects, in the happiness aspects as well of it all, I found it very important to develop it more and more within the corporate context, and have teamed up with some wonderful people to present to you today exactly what we've discovered and what we're putting out there. So thank you very much indeed for attending.
So as it does say here, yes, we are the Flourish Revolutionaries, and we do really believe that what we're looking at here is something very, very revolutionary to people and organisations. So I am Sharon Young, Director of Pearl Catchers. Over the years, I've worked within organisations as an employee, as a manager, and as an external consultant. And I've seen firsthand where organisations where employees are happy and engaged versus those where they're stressed and dissonant, and the difference that makes to just the feeling of the organisation, but more importantly to the results and productivity that go on there. So as an emotional intelligence, NLP and coaching practitioner, I'm fascinated by what makes people tick and in supporting people to be the best that they can be. So for me, this is why Flourish is really important. And from a personal point of view, I think I'm like a lot of you, that I know a lot of the stuff, but I probably struggle to implement some of it myself. So for me, Flourish is actually my own personal journey for living with Flourish as an individual too. And Chaz.
Well, yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gents. Again, we can't reiterate this enough. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My background is military. And as a result of being in the military, I got to see a whole range of different management and leadership styles, some of which I found were particularly fantastic, some of which I found were absolutely dreadful. And similar to Sharon, I'm really interested in what makes people tick. I've found in my journey since leaving the Army and being a manager and leader in a variety of different organisations, that people really do need to be happy and engaged to be producing their best work. And this is kind of where I've been going for a number of years, and obviously meeting with Jeff and Sharon and getting some of the things that we've got together over the last 9 months, it's been really exciting, and that's what we're going to be bringing to you this afternoon. So just to give you a clue, this will be an interactive webinar, so I would ask that you switch off any distractions that you might have in terms of telephones, close down your emails or Facebook, so that you can get the most from what we're about to tell you. And what we are about to tell you is something that, as you can probably tell, we're really excited about. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to ask you for some feedback on what we're presenting and what we're about to launch. And also, we're going to ask you to sign up to get some more free information that we think will be useful for you in the future. Now, in the email that we sent you inviting you to attend this webinar, and Sharon, if you wouldn't mind just flicking through to the next slide, please, we showed you these statistics, and I would hope that you'd agree that they don't make for great reading. Consider what the impact for your organisation would be of losing multiple employees to stress for however many days, or losing them permanently and having to replace them. You see there we've got an average of £30,000. On some of the comments that were posted on the article that showed us that statistic, it was suggested that it's actually closer to 50,000, not 30, so that makes it huge. And consider also how your employees or how the people in your organisation perform. Do they always give their best? Now, as an example, and this one's quite recent, and it's actually been in the news this last 24 hours. Consider an organisation here in England. This time last year, they were the best in the country, and expectations for the coming year were that they would perform to a similar standard this year. Fast forward to now, and something went wrong. At some point early on in the year, the top performers in this company weren't happy. And it was obvious that they weren't happy because their performances started to deteriorate. And as a result, they lost a potential £100 million. Now that sounds like quite a figure, doesn't it? Especially when you consider that the top performers who've affected this drop number only 10 to 15. The organisation is quite famous too. Chelsea Football Club, at this time last year, champions of England. Now whatever happened, performances on the pitch were adversely affected. And as of this afternoon, it's certain that they can't qualify for the lucrative Champions League, a competition which could potentially make them that 100 million. That's all down to poor performance. Now on the opposite side of the coin, we've got Leicester City, a team who are widely expected to perform poorly this season. Their team spirit, desire and grit have enabled them to become champions. And current estimates, based on reports on the BBC today, have estimated that they're going to benefit by something in the region of £150 million. Now that's huge. Now what we're talking about this afternoon might not make you 150 million. What we're talking about might take you more than a year to get to. What we're talking about is continuous evolution, or if you prefer, a revolution. What we're talking about this afternoon will not make your organisation perfect. What it will do is generate individual roadmaps and give you the choice that you can use to start on that path. Now Gallup consistently tells us that only a small number of employees in most organisations are engaged, an average of only 13% worldwide. And one of our goals is to try and address that figure, even if only a small way. There are a number of organisations out there that are currently aiming to create happy workplaces. We want to go a step further. We want to create flourishing workplaces. And we also appreciate that there are a number of organisations who aren't interested in what we're talking about, and we are really happy that you signed up to listen to us this afternoon, because that tells us that you want to make a difference in the same way that we do. Now, as I mentioned, we will be asking for feedback at the end of the webinar, and if you have any questions, we'd be grateful if you could save them until the end. Sharon, Jeff and I have been working on this model for the best part of 9 months, and we are really excited to be presenting it to you this afternoon. So as a very quick start, I'm going to ask Jeff to just give you a quick overview of the model and what it is that we're going to be talking about. Jeff, over to you.
Okay, great, Chaz. Thank you very much. Yes, as we say, it's taking us somewhere even beyond happiness and well-being. They're very much integral parts of this model and take us onto the level of thriving and flourishing. So flourishing individuals, flourishing workplaces will make eventually flourishing societies as well. So a very big ideological base behind everything we're doing as well. I'll just take you through the model by turning the Flourish acronym on its head and starting from H, which is all about health and physicality. So very important to recognize the need to live a balanced lifestyle, ensuring one is physically in good condition in order to be able to fulfill all the emotional and mental demands of the workplace. S will be self or self-management, understanding one's individual needs and strengths and how they can be catered for and leveraged in the workplace. I, influence and choice, exploring ways to make a greater personal impact and generate the conditions necessary for positive changes in the workplace culture. Onto R, resilience and mindfulness, creating and developing effective coping strategies that reduce stress and help one bounce back from adverse situations that arise at work. U, standing for unity and relationships, building and strengthening relationships based on mutual trust, positive regard and support, allowing for more cohesive, dynamic and effective teamwork. Optimism and positive emotions, maintaining a positive outlook and developing positive emotions, allowing for more effective and controlled responses to daily workplace activities and challenges. Laughter and fun, connecting to a more light-hearted approach to life and discovering creative ways to incorporate fun and humour into the workplace. And focus and meaning, drawing it all together to one beautifully constructed and integrated model, exploring one's personal values and sense of purpose in life and how they align to and given clear expression in the workplace.
Thanks, Jeff. So as you can see, what we've looked here is use Flourish not just as a flourishing workplace, but we've used it as an acronym to build our model on. And what we felt is there's a lot of companies out there who are doing different aspects of well-being, but we felt there wasn't really one model that pulled into a holistic thing, something that covered all the physical, mental and emotional aspects of things. And this is where we're so excited to be bringing together all of these different things into one model. That is, you may see the image in the middle, it's kind of like your own rucksack. So what we want to do through Flourish and through the programs that we run is to initially give people our own rucksack. And each of the letters, you'll see there's an image, and we'll talk about those as we go through the session, where we're giving you something to put into your rucksack that's going to help you on your personal journey. We felt quite strongly that we shouldn't be telling people where they should go. We should be helping people on whatever journey they need to take, because everyone's different and what's important to them is going to be different at any one time. So for us, it was about giving you that kit bag of all of those things, those tools and techniques and things to help you so you can go on whatever your personal journey might be. So in terms of our journey for the rest of this session, what we are going to do is to take you through each of the 8 different aspects of Flourish, give you a little bit more information about them, ask you a couple of questions or give you an activity on each of them. And what we will also do, you may have noticed in your email that we sent with the joining instructions and the links, we sent you a little image that was something like this. Any of you that have done coaching may recognise a concept called the Wheel of Life, and this is our version of it. And it's something we would use with individuals, but you can also use with an organisation. So as we're going through each of the letters, I'd like you to, as we finish each one of them, to just think about, if it's on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with where you are on that particular aspect of the Flourish model as we go through? And then we'll have, as Chaz said, we'll have some questions at the end, and be really useful then to get some feedback for you and to let you know what other free resources we'll be moving to from there. So let's kick off, and as Jeff said, we like to do things differently at Pearlcatcher, so we are starting from the end. So rather than starting with F, we are starting with H. And although there's a few key themes that flow through the whole model, we feel that this actually kind of helps you build on things, starting from the very basics, which is around health and physicality, which Chaz is going to tell you a little bit more about.
So given that we're talking about happiness, well-being, I'm going to start with talking about death, which is a really great start, right? Early this morning on the BBC, there was a report about the mortality of older people in the UK. And this report mentioned that there's a significant gap in age of mortality based on lifestyle choices that people are making. Now, the difference was a huge 30 years. And the report attributed the differences to educational and socio-economic levels. And as you can see from the quote from Hippocrates, there's actually nothing new in what they're really saying. So as I mentioned when I introduced myself, I was in the army for a good chunk of my career, and the metaphor that we're using particularly resonates with me, because going on a patrol or going on a journey would often start for me with a rucksack or Bergen. And the first thing that we're going to talk about in terms of health and physicality are the things that really would be the building blocks of actually getting out to doing what it is that we need to do. So we start off with a sleeping bag or sleeping mat, and that we needed to carry to make sure that we were able to get enough sleep to function properly whilst out in the field. And of course we're going to advise that you should get as much sleep as you need to carry out your functions properly. Then of course we would look at rations. And as soldiers we were given carefully calorie counted packs to ensure that we had enough energy, sufficient protein, and of course the odd treat to enable us to march, fight, and if necessary fall back to a given situation. And we were given approximately 6,000 calories a day, which may seem a little high. However, we may march 20 to 25 miles in a day, and 6,000 calories would just about cover what we did. And of course we also had to carry plenty of water to make sure that we were sufficiently hydrated to be able to do the job. And of course food and nutrition and hydration are key elements in what we're advocating. So the H in the Flourish model, as we've already said, relates to health and physicality. Now I don't think either Sharon, Jeff or myself could be considered experts in the field of nutritional health, so what we aim to do is point people in the right direction so that they can make the choices that are best for themselves in order to make them as healthy as they might be, and of course live a little bit longer. Interestingly, somebody posted on Facebook recently that only 25% of the population were interested in improving their health and well-being. And we also appreciate that changing behaviours is not easy, and that if people don't want to change, they won't. What we aim to do here is kind of tell our own personal stories, which we are hoping will serve to encourage people to make the changes that they need to make. I mean, let's be honest, any of us perfect? Probably not. There is no one single solution that will fit everybody, and what we're trying to do with this particular element of the model is to encourage people to find what works for them. Now for us, general good health is a key factor in being happy and fulfilled. I know that a few years ago I was particularly overweight and my joints ached. I was on medication for high blood pressure, and I was, generally speaking, considerably less positive than I am now. When I decided to lose weight, my main motivation was that I wanted to get off that medication because my mum died from having a stroke, and I wanted to lessen the chances of that happening to me. Just think about your own personal health at the moment. Just take a couple of seconds and mark your score out of 10 for your health and physicality on that flower that we sent you. Is it lower down or is it higher up? Hopefully it will be higher.
What would be quite useful actually, if I won't necessarily share names, but if you could put a note on the chat section and share that either with just the organisers or with everyone, just put your rating in, so between 1 and 10. So where do you think you are in terms of looking after your general health and physicality? If you could enter that into the chat box, then we can see and have a little bit more of a conversation around that one. I can tell you for a starter, that's probably one of my lowest, so I'm probably at about a 3 on that one at the moment. No, they're all being very shy at the moment, Chaz. No one's sharing any of those with us.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Thank you, Chaz. Chaz is an 8. Anyone between the two of us, if I'm a 3 and Chaz is an 8, what does anyone else think? Just click on your chat button and just put the number in. Let us know where you think you are. Okay then, we won't make you share now, but if you want to share later on, that would be really useful. So health is the starting point, as Chad said. You need to have that really to enable you to do anything else. So there we go. Jeff is a 7. Thank you, Jeff. The next thing that we look at is self-awareness and growth, and this really is the building blocks of who you are. So a quote here that growth demands a temporary surrender of security. It may mean giving up familiar but limiting patterns, safe but unrewarding work, values no longer believed in, and relationships that have lost their meaning. And so self-awareness and growth is for us really important. It's one of the key building blocks of emotional intelligence, is that understanding who you are and what's important to you and what strengths you have and what holds you back. And you'll see in the top right corner, the image we have for this is a map. So I mentioned that I do neuro-linguistic programming, and one of the things we talk about there is the idea of people's map of reality, and that every single person's map is totally different based on the background that they've had, their upbringing, their beliefs, the level of confidence they have. All sorts of different things drive our behaviours above the surface. But we don't tend to really know and spend much time thinking about what those things are. We often act unconsciously, and in fact we tend to react to situations without exploring why we have reacted in that way, and maybe choosing to respond rather than react all the time. So for us, a really important thing, once you've got your basic physicality sorted, is to say, well, let's just take a little bit of time to think about me. And who am I? And what are the things that I'm great at? What are the things I would like to be better at? And for me, we like to think about starting with what your strengths are. I don't know about you, but most development activities I've ever been on, it always seems to start with what you can't do. Any kind of 360 feedbacks always start on thinking about, okay, what are the things that you're not good at? And for us, it's really important to start with your strengths. So we very much look at a strengths-based version of creating your reality and building from that position of strength rather than focusing initially on what you can't do. Because the reality is we all will have things we're amazing at and things that we're not so amazing at, and that's perfectly fine. So what would be really useful is if I could get you guys to share with me quickly on the chat again, rather than thinking about something that's wrong, let's take this from a positive point of view. What is one strength that you value about yourself? So if we were looking to help you to grow and develop further, what's one thing that you already have that you think, yeah, I'm pretty good at this. I value this strength that I have in myself. And then what's one thing you would like to do differently? Okay, so we've got here. Okay, so we've got resilience, okay, from Christina. We've got creativity from David, okay. I've actually just found a different place where all the answers came from the last one as well, you know. So we had a few people on the health, around 6 and 7, and a 4 and a 7 and a 5. So we had quite a variety of those. So sorry, it was showing in a different place. So resilience, creativity, okay, the ability to learn things and to summarise them for others. That's a really useful skill there in terms of being able to do that. Okay, so in terms of then things that we can got. So what have we got here as well? So valuing relationship building skills, but like to improve prioritization. Okay. And I wonder how it feels doing it that way, rather than just saying this is what's wrong with me. Actually starting off with this is what's good about me first of all, rather than sort of than always focusing on the negative first of all. So for us, in terms of moving forward with things, so self-acceptance and growth, it's very much around that, what's great about me, how can I move things? So we've got passion and enthusiasm, yeah, that's another really great one. Keeping going, so we've got some really great answers coming through on this now, so that's brilliant. Thank you all very much for that. Okay, so that's very much around the self-awareness and growth, so getting that image of who you are, what's important to you. It's about being the best you can be, understanding who you are and accepting yourself fully. It's about building on your strengths and learning to effectively manage those aspects that impact your effectiveness. And it's about embracing change and uncertainty. As we all know, there is so much of that going on in this world. And it's about seeing that change and uncertainty as an opportunity for personal growth. So that's sort of an initial idea then, looking into self, and so that's your map, is the thing that we're going to give you for your rucksack there. So again, I'd like you to do the same thing and marking yourself from 1 to 10, with 1 being, yep, I really don't feel I'm that aware of myself, I don't feel I'm that good at growing. That's on your 1 up to 10, where, yep, absolutely, I'm on that growth accelerator the whole time. So again, mark yourself from 1 to 10 on where you think you are in terms of that. Now, kind of would hope, bearing in mind the people that you are, that your scores be quite high, and yet we're getting up. We've got a 9, we've got an 8, we've got a 3. Okay, so we've got a little bit of work to do on that one, and everyone is really different. That's the whole point, that with this model it will vary for every person based on where they are and what's important for them. So yeah, so really important there. Okay, and Chaz, we have an 8 there as well. So okay, so we've got a range of scores coming up there for that. So excellent. So I'm going to pass back now to Chaz, who's going to talk about the next one, which is the I, which is influence and choice. Chaz.
So you can see on the slide there, we have around about 30,000 attempts to influence us on a daily basis. That's a huge number, isn't it? I mean, you think about all the adverts that we see, the people on the street corners trying to give us free newspapers, all that sort of stuff. Somebody is trying to influence us. And the good thing about influence is that we all have choices, and we can choose whether or not we're influenced by something or not. So as we're in a chatty mood, what has influenced you recently? Is it an advert? Is it something that you've seen out and about? What is it that's influenced you? And what have you done that's been as a result of that? You want to just pop that into your chat box?
I think a lot of people are using the questions because they can't all see the chat box apparently. So I'm answering it in the questions as well. So that's fine. I have changed the settings, so you may well be able to see the chat box now. I don't know if you haven't. So, yes, there should be a chat box, but at the bottom, I've just changed the setting. If you can't see it, then the questions is absolutely fine. I'll just double check that. Experiencing a coaching method that was amazing. Okay, so that was an influencing thing for Christina there.
Okay. That's always good, isn't it? And we always have these choices. And if you think about choice, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story now, because if you ask Sharon or Jeff, they'll tell you I love my stories. And it's a story about a farmer in ancient China. And he has this magnificent stallion on his farm. And all of the villagers that he lives around are really jealous. And one day, the farmer decides he's going to enter the stallion in the local show. And of course, it wins first prize. And all the villagers around saying, wow, that's fantastic. You must be really pleased. And he said, yeah, maybe it's good, maybe it's not. And off they go. Now, because he's entered this horse in this show, thieves have seen it, and they come and they steal his horse. So all the villagers around, oh, that's terrible, you must be distraught. And he said, well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, who knows? Now, this was a clever horse, and it escaped from the thieves, and it brought back 2 wild horses with it. So again, the villagers around to the farmer, oh, you must be ecstatic. This horse is incredible. And the farmer is there, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And the farmer's son was breaking one of these horses in. He was trying to tame it, and he got thrown, and he broke his leg. And again, the villagers around, oh, that's terrible, you must be distraught. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. Who knows? Then about a week later, the Imperial Army came marching through the village, and they took all the boys of fighting age, but they left the farmer's son behind because he had his leg in a cast. You see where this is going. It could be good, it could be bad, and we have a choice that we can make. And when it comes to influencing generally, we think about influencing somebody else. So for the Flourish model, the first thing we're looking at is how we can influence ourselves. And as a question, how well do you know your chemistry? And when I say your chemistry, I mean what's actually going on in your body at any one time. You probably already know that what's going on in your mind can have a huge effect on your body. And the opposite is also true. Your body and what you do with it can also have a big effect on your mind. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is released during particularly stressful situations and will have a negative impact on how we think, how we feel, and on the actions we take in that particular situation. Now, there are ways that we can fool our minds into producing less cortisol and producing happier chemicals, for want of a better phrase, to help us perform better and think more clearly. Now, these happier chemicals include oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone, as well as dopamine and testosterone. And all we need to do to generate these is think about how we sit, whether or not we're smiling. Simple things can have a big, big effect. So when we're looking at influence and choice, we're looking initially at self-influence and self-choice. And as you can see there with the Swiss Army knife, we're looking to give people a number of different tools that they can use so that they can choose themselves to be more positive and happier in their own lives.
Here, if you like, Jazz, that people came up with on some things that have influenced them. Possibly because you're sitting next to him. Gareth said his wife. Someone watched a travel program, booked a holiday. Yeah, that's definitely influence in action, isn't it? My daughter caring for teammates rather than scoring all the goals herself. So yeah, and I think people can hear our crunching as well in the background, so we'll maybe just stop rustling paper whilst we're around. So yeah, some really good stuff coming back from people from that in terms of different things that have influenced them.
Yeah, and it's interesting that everybody's different as well.
Yeah. So again, if we want to have a think about for you in terms of how do you manage your influence in terms of that scoring yourself again from the 1 to 10. So thinking about where you are in terms of how much impact do you think you make, how much influence do you have on others, how much choice do you give yourself versus how much do you let other people in the outside world influence you. So how happy are you with that? Again, if you want to just jot down in your questions between 1 and 10 where you are on those. Okay, so yeah, so the question was the same thing as we've done on the others, David, just to repeat, was we looked at the others and we were scoring between 1 and 10. So on your sort of your rate of on number 1, you really don't think you're doing terribly well around influence and choice. Up to 10, you think, yeah, you're really good. You know, you can influence people as you want to, and you don't feel that you're adversely influenced by other people. You take control of your choice and your influence. That was the question. So we've got a 7 there so far. Any other responses to that then? So we've got a 6 here, and would like it to be much higher than that. Tell me what to write. That's very amusing. Obviously you're waiting for an external influence for that one, David. I like that. That's very clever. And David then put ho ho. We'll be getting to the laughter in a little while, actually, David. Not just yet. So okay, so that's looking at influence. Anything else you wanted to say on that, Chaz, before we move on to the next one?
No, that's the lot for me for now. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So the next one then, moving on, is we're sort of working our way backwards. So it's now the R, which is resilience and mindfulness. And for this, the thing that we're going to put into your rucksack is the first aid kit, because it really is that sort of first aid kit to help you at those times where things are just getting a little bit too much about you. Resilient people really have got those resources to manage stress. I think we all know that the world that we live in, it is impossible to totally get rid of any kind of stress, and actually stress generally is not necessarily a bad thing. So it's very much around how we manage it in a positive way. It's about being able to bounce back from those difficult situations that we have, and managing sort of through things. That's what resilience is, and one of the key tools of that for me is around mindfulness. We'll be looking at some of the other aspects around resilience. We touch on those when we look at the positive emotions and the laughter. But there's this idea of the fact that it's not just about managing the stress in the short term. As a little story I say when I'm doing stress management courses, and I hold up a glass or a bottle of water and ask people how heavy it is, and they'll come back and they'll say X amount of pounds, this heavy, that heavy. And then say to them, well, actually, it's not about how heavy it is. It's about how long I hold on to it. So if I hold on to it for a couple of minutes, then that's fine. There's no issues coming from that at all. If I hold on to it for about an hour, my arm's going to start aching a wee bit. If I hold on to it all day, I'm probably actually going to lose my grip and I'm going to drop it because I'm going to sort of lose all the feeling in my arm. And the stresses and strains of life are very much like holding on to that bottle of water, is you need to put it down now and again. And so the idea for me around resilience and mindfulness is that just stopping and not letting everything get to you. We have such a fast-paced world today that there's so many different stimulations. There's actually some research that showed recently that when people are being distracted by all the different technology that we've got going on today, that as a result of that, it can actually lower your IQ between 10 and 15 points. Not permanently, I hasten to add, but in the short term, it can lower your IQ by 10 to 15 points because our minds can't cope with all of the distractions. And how many times can you say that you really are truly present in the moment? When you're having a conversation with someone or you're sitting in a meeting and your mind might be wandering to all the 300 emails you've got in your inbox, or the report you've got to get finished that day, or what you've got to cook for dinner that evening. There's so many different things that are coming in and distracting us, and I know in meetings and training courses now it's unusual to not have people check in on their emails or on phones as things are going through, because we can't wait for the next piece of information to come to us. So in essence, really, mindfulness in its simplest form, it's one of those words that's actually become increasingly popular over the last few years. But in essence, it's not necessarily about meditation. We've got the image of the people here doing it. But really, it's just about being present. It's about taking that time to focus on where am I now, and actually come out of your head a little bit, so to speak. We quite often forget about what's going on in our bodies. We spend so much time in our head, and so many different thoughts coming backwards and forwards. And so mindfulness doesn't have to have any kind of spiritual meditation connotations. It's just about taking that time and just being. And it's about moving yourself from just experiencing a thought to observing what you're doing and what you're feeling. So this isn't maybe the ideal situation, but I'd just like you to take a moment, as long as no one's driving or anything, to just close your eyes just for 30 seconds. And when a thought comes into your mind, that's absolutely fine, but I'd just like you to count how many thoughts we have. So every time a thought comes into your head, just count it. Just go 1, 2, and just count that for about 30 seconds. And then I'd like to see how many thoughts any of you had in that period of time. So just start counting your thoughts with your eyes closed and just focusing on that. Okay, so in your little question box now then, if you can let me know how many thoughts you had in that time, and I'll just see what people say in that time. Take the keys out the door because... Okay, let's see what we've got here. Good Lord. Okay, so we've got 20. Goodness, someone's maybe we've got 20 thoughts. We've got 11 thoughts. Any offers on 20 or 11? What else have we got then? Anyone else got any thoughts on that one? What else have we got in terms of those? 13 thoughts. Wow, that's a lot of thoughts in 30 seconds, isn't it? We've got 13 thoughts. She was one of our listeners was focused on my question, so that was my key thought. That's good. I like that. 15 thoughts, 11. So interesting. In 30 seconds, everyone's had over 10 thoughts for the most part. And if you imagine working that through your working day, how many thoughts go through your mind? And one of the key things we tell people when I do very simple mindfulness exercises is that you actually can't stop the mind chatter. That just happens. It goes on, and that's perfectly fine. But the challenge is what you do with it. So if, for example, I set you all a piece of homework and I said, okay, what I want you to do is to go outside and I want you to just notice all the cars that are going past, and I want you to count the red cars. And so you're all sitting there counting the red cars, and then all of a sudden Jeff jumps up and he goes running after one of these red cars, and he throws himself, grabs hold of the bumper, and he's getting dragged along the road, and his knees are getting scratched, and he's shouting, help, help, this car is trying to kill me. Well, actually it's not. He's chosen to run after that car and to let it drag him in a direction. And that's exactly what we do with thoughts. All of these thoughts just come through our mind. The unconscious mind is constantly going through lots of thoughts. And we are able to make a choice, going back to the previous aspect around influence and choice, whether we run after those thoughts or whether we just let them go. And it's actually quite easy to train your mind into letting go of some of those things and just giving yourself that bit of time to just be present and just take stock of everything. And during that time, we then start to look at how you can resolve some of the things that cause you stress. So a final thing on looking at resilience is if we can, again, just do a quick score. Where are you at the moment from 1 to 10 in terms of how you deal with the stresses and strains of life, how present you are in life on a general basis versus how distracted you are, how many things affect you. So we can do a little bit of a score on that again, and then we will move on to unity and relationships. So we've got a 6 to 7 here, okay. We've got a 6. I just saw 13, but I realised that was to the last question. Anyone else? We've got an 8 here, okay. So actually not too bad on scores again. So okay, we've got someone who has actually worked a lot on this, so it's now an 8, so that's brilliant. A 3, yep, I'm probably with you on the 3 actually there. I have times when I'm good, but times when I get very easily distracted by things, particularly when I'm excited about them. So okay, so again we can see we've got a different mood from that. So that's looking at resilience and mindfulness and just taking that time to be present. So I'm going to hand you over to Jeff now, who's actually going to do the next 3 of our different letters. So Jeff, over to you.
Great. Okay, marvelous. So we've got all the different aspects from the health onto the self and understanding of the self. And of course, without anybody around us, sometimes it's a thing people would say it would be easier, but it would also be a lot harsher. The world would look a lot crueler and a lot colder if we were alone in this world having to deal with all the issues that we have to deal with. So it's very important that people we're surrounding ourselves with, sometimes we can choose the people and sometimes not, depending. In our workplace, or often the colleagues we're with are the people that are the given in the workplace. And how do we deal with the relationships we have with them? Having dealt with the relationship to ourselves, how do we project ourselves and how do we create a bond with other people that will allow us to achieve our maximum in terms of getting the support we need? So trust is a really, really important element here. And of course, if we can trust in ourselves, we can afford to trust in others and slowly develop a relationship around honesty and open communication. Without trust, it's very, very difficult to admit your faults, admit your mistakes. And it's one of the things that possibly holds a lot of people back is the fear of making mistakes. And often mistakes is the best way to learn and we can move on from those mistakes. But only if we have the ability to be able to express that and be able to share it with other people are we able to feel that comfortable in sharing of those aspects of ourselves or those negative aspects, what we often define as negative. aspects. So this idea that we have built good relationships with the people around us, and especially with our colleagues, is something that in workplaces is essential, certainly in terms of the management and the employees' communication. And often a good manager will be the reason why many people stay in their jobs, and a bad manager or bad supervisor will be a reason people give for leaving their place of work. So there's a lot of staff turnover because the manager has said something particularly negative and that's had an impact on the employee. So thinking about that, how can I say good things and how can I be positive in my relationships, and often flatter and compliment other people. We too often find good reasons to criticize and put other people down, but it's actually good to look at their strengths, other people's strengths, and say, well, I like that about you and I love that about your work, and your work actually helped me and contributed to what I was doing. So if we can look for those times that we can actually be supportive of others, I think we can expect that when we need that for ourselves. So that mutuality is really, really important, and that's something we need to work on, our relationships at work. So trust is important, the ability to be able to express ourselves in a clear way. So many misunderstandings destroy good relationships. When you look back at what people have said, it's not so much what they've said, but how they've been interpreted by the other person. So be very aware of what you're thinking you're saying and what you're actually saying, which leads us on to effective listening. Sometimes we're not listening in a way that we're really understanding what the other person is saying, and sometimes asking them for clarification is really, really important so we don't get into those grey areas. So all these elements we need to take into account, and these are essentially people skills, the ability to communicate well, to deal with conflicts, to be able to collaborate in a good way, to be able to set out boundaries. Often we do that when it's too late, and then it gets a very aggressive state where we say to people, hang on, stand back, you've walked into my personal space. Let people know where those boundaries are so that people don't get there in the first place, and so you create a very nice, mutual, respectful relationship with those people around you. So that's really, really important. And the acts of kindness that you can show to your fellow workers. I think that's really important because it also reflects on you, the acts of kindness you're giving to others, and it certainly is something that can raise your own happiness levels, giving that level of appreciation. I think the word is appreciation to what others are doing in their work for you, with you, in terms of getting the work done. So those are really important aspects to show. And I think the lovely picture here of people holding hands, it's again, holding hands is a nice touchy-feely thing, not for everybody. So everybody has their own way and their own, and that needs to be respected. That in each individual has his own way of expressing themselves and being able to understand the diversity within the workplace. The diversity sometimes comes out of culture, personal opinions, personal beliefs, and being able to take those on board and being able to identify them and being able to deal with them is really, really important aspect of unity in relationships. So how much do you show your appreciation for others? How many kind words do you have? And I think there's no end of possibilities there. Different acts that we can create on a day-to-day basis. An email that we could send to our fellow colleague saying how much we appreciate what they're doing. So what for you, if you were looking at key issues you need to work on improving your relationships with your work colleagues, what for you, if you could put it into one word, was a key issue surrounding building of decent communication with others? Is it trust? Is it respect? Is kindness something that you need to show more of? Appreciation? Tom Rath says a book, Vital Friends, reports that individuals who said they had a best friend at work were 7 times more likely to report being engaged in their job. So in terms of engagement, it's absolutely essential to develop this feeling of, wow, it's fun to be with the people I'm working with. So let's have a look at that one, and it's something we should be examining.
A couple of answers so far if anyone else wants to join. So listening, or I guess not listening as being an issue is one of the things that's come up so far from people. Too much digital communication, so sort of everything being done by email or phones or webinars rather than face-to-face. Humour has come up, okay, as an interesting point. Any other things from you guys? Okay, so yep, some interesting things there, Jeff. Oh, hang
Excellent.
on. Trust, okay, yep. Trust is so important, and being authentic, genuine and specific, and actually going with trust. We've also got truthfulness. So yeah.
Honestly, it's very important.
Yeah.
Being, again, to be honest to yourself, to be honest to others, absolutely essential.
Yeah. So I guess again then let's think about where you are in terms of your unity in relationships. So where would you rate yourself currently on that 1 to 10 in terms of the unity in relationships that you have in life and at work particularly? So again, if you want to take a second to share with us, so we've got a 4 here, okay? So some room for improvement on that one. We've got a 4 so far. What else have we got? Any other responses? I've got a 6 here. That's good. I've got a 9. Hey, that's a good one. Okay. We need to come and get some best practice from you then as to why we're getting a 9. So again, quite a variety of scores. Anything else coming in from anyone before we move on? So you don't have to tell us, but just be honest with yourself in the spirit of honesty. Okay. So a 7. Okay. So 4, 9, 7, 3. And another 8, okay, better in work than out of work, okay, so again, these things do vary in different aspects of your life, absolutely. Okay, so anything else on unity before we move on to the next one, Jeff?
Yeah, I think that's great to have those responses,
yeah.
And it's something we have to continually work on. I don't think it's something we can say we've established now a wonderful relationship. It's something we shouldn't take for granted, not in our personal lives or our professional lives. Every day we must be thinking, how can we improve and work on these relationships to make them the best and the optimal relationships they can possibly be? Yeah. Because obviously it's going to be something that will both help yourself and help others, and that mutual support is something that will boost workplace happiness and well-being for certain.
And it's interesting, I read literally just today a report that sort of teenagers prefer to interact via digital communication, so over sort of texting and phones than actually being with people, which is quite scary as to the importance of this one moving forward into the next generation.
Yeah, it certainly has its own aspects. So optimism and positive emotions, and this so much links in with everything else. And when we're talking about happiness, and happiness is something that often people associate with the big smiling faces and ha 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 and a lot of laughter, which is also very important. I'll get onto that. But happiness is really quite a deep issue, and it's something that we need to be working on both personally and professionally. And of course, our happiness is something that can generally affect people around us. If we're unhappy, we certainly can see the effects, and it can really be something it's known to called emotional contagion, where it can actually infect people by our certain emotional states. So I always say it's better to be infecting people with happiness than our irritability. Though it's not so easy to snap out of it, as people say, when anybody's a little bit depressed or an understatement, or someone's not feeling so good that particular day. How do they get to a place where the positive emotions take over? And again, it's something we need to be working on. So we look at the quote here that people who have experienced positive emotions at work have high levels of engagement, organizational citizenship behavior and job performance, and are less likely to experience burnout or engage in counterproductive behavior. Absolutely. I mean, we can understand that those are the results. And if I ask people, do you think it's important to be happy? Everybody will say yes. But it is getting from that place where the theory is all there, and certainly positive psychology has been a lot about seeing how people can be happier in their lives. But it's really understanding the negative emotions as well. And possibly there needs to be work done on that aspect in order to reach positive emotional states. So taking into account we do have negative emotions, and it's very much part of being human. We can't walk around all the time with a big smile on our faces, and it would be also inauthentic probably to do that a lot of the time. But we need to balance things, and I think probably the word balance, if I was to use a word that would associate for me with the word happiness, I would say emotional balance. So we've got the negative, or we've got the aspect we call negative, and possibly even the division between negative and positive is arbitrary. They're just emotions. But let's look at emotions that really give us that boost of energy, that really make us feel good. And making us feel good, we project that onto others. So that sense of good welfare, personal welfare, I know they've done research in positive psychology that actually talks about a happy neighbor can raise your happiness levels by about 25%. So a happiness neighbor, if we translate into that workplace, the person sitting next to you in the workplace, very, very important that they're happy for your happiness, but obviously it goes both ways. You have a responsibility in yourself to be happy and help boost that other person's energy levels. Wonderful things that happiness has proven, or positive emotions generally are proven to do, which is really broaden your thinking. Certainly resilience helps you with resilience, bouncing back from difficult situations. So happiness is really important in that sense. Of course, happiness is one of the positive emotions, gratitude, for example. And if you see in the corner, we've got a little journal with a lovely smiley face. And the gratitude journal is something the positive psychologists talk about endlessly as a real boost for your happiness level. So it's really appreciating what you've got in life, writing in a journal 3 times every day before you go to sleep for 21 days, 3 things that you really feel grateful about. And often I start with the fact with work, sometimes it can be just saying we've got work. There are many people unfortunately out of work and are struggling, and the fact that I go to work every day, sometimes it seems like hell, but the fact I've got it at all is something I can actually appreciate. So if I can start from that basic thing, it's a bit like saying, thank God I'm breathing. And that's also, there's sometimes those simple things we miss. We should learn to appreciate really a lot more. So I've got work, and there's aspects of work that I like, I particularly like. I need to focus on those aspects. It's another thing we really enjoy, complaining and criticizing. And we really have to examine why we enjoy that so much, and thinking possibly we can enjoy doing other things more, such as being, for example, kind is something I mentioned in unity relationships, especially as it shows wonderful results. So look at things I can emotionally invest in that will actually be good for me and good for others. And I think that mutuality, again, is something that will bring me a lot. Certainly volunteering, for example, in the community, as a medical clown, when I go out and do my volunteer work in the hospitals, it brings me a hell of a boost of energy that I then can take with me for the rest of the week. In fact, it's quite funny how many people ask me when I'm volunteering how much I earn for volunteering. So I say, well, something like 30 smiles and 40 laughs each time I come to do the hospital clowning. And that's worth a lot, and that sort of energy translates itself into my surroundings. I hope it translates itself into my surroundings. So your whole body language, your whole tone of voice can be seen in terms of where you are emotionally. And your perspective on your work can be vastly changed if you're in a good mood as opposed to a bad mood. So certain days you feel just things aren't working. Maybe they are working, or maybe they could be working if you could find that positive state of mind. So sometimes it's not necessarily something that will put you in the right state or a good state or a positive state of mind. It's first of all finding that positive state, finding a way to connect to it. Sometimes it's looking back and thinking what moments really make me feel great about myself, about who I am, about what I'm doing. Where are those great times? And really connecting back to those times when we're going through rough periods. So understanding there's always, as they say, the light at the end of the tunnel. Cliches are often very good ways of putting things, because they that's why they're called cliches. There's so many truths there. So identify your positive emotions, identify your negative emotions, understand what's getting in the way of you being a happy bunny. So in fact, it's so important, Richard Branson talks about it as a secret ingredient for successful businesses. If you have a happy company, it will be invincible. And I think there's a lot of sense in terms of your customers, and your customers are obviously going to be attracted to you if you're smiling and happy and projecting that great sense of energy, and they'll come back to you rather than if every time they see you, you're angry and steam is coming out of your ears. So think about in terms of your customers, and also in terms of your colleagues. How important and how valuable is your own personal happiness levels here. So write down 3 things that you are grateful for in life. You could talk about life in general. You could look at your work and say, what are you actually grateful for in work? Identify one key thing. When things get bad, you can focus on that and say, okay, so these things I'm actually struggling with at the moment, but this one thing, wow, this is something that plays into my strengths, something that's making me flourish, and with this one thing I can overcome all these other 3 things. Go and do that for about 21 days. And of course, 21 days is an interesting concept because it's suggested that if you write for more than 21 days each day, it becomes just a regular, boring, routine, repetitive thing. And change and variety is actually quite important. And we can find that in a number of little things that we can do to make our day a little bit more full of variety and spice. So write down those 3 things and check in with yourself. How many positive statements am I making as opposed to negative ones during the day? And again, the ratio of positive statements to negative is really important for flourishing workplaces. And we can actually undo the effects of negative statements and negative emotions by a good boost of positive gratitude, kindness, awe, interest, love, respect and joy, all elements illustrated by Barbara Fredrickson in her book Positivity, which talks beautifully about the research also done behind the value of positive emotions.
And if I could just pause you there, we're getting a couple of nice responses, but I'm just conscious of where we are time-wise. I know we started a few minutes late, but I would like to make sure we get on to the last couple of things, and we've got plenty more we can tell you about it at other points. But if I can maybe just ask you to just take a moment now to think again about what your score is between 1 and 10 in terms of how you feel how positively you manage your emotions, how realistically optimistic you are. And then Jeff and I will quickly take you through the last couple of letters because we wanted to get some feedback from you at the end. So I'm very conscious of your valuable time. So if we could just jot down your scores for that where you are now, and then Jeff and I will just do a quick step through laughter and fun and focus, if that's okay, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do something very, very quick with laughter and fun. We've been sitting here very attentively listening, and it's not easy to sit for too long in one place. So I want you just to shake your body out. I just want you to shake those shoulders, shake your upper bodies, and then make funny faces or make crazy faces at your screen. Nobody can see you. Nobody's got their webcam on. Although, of course, it'd be a lot more fun if we could. But you can actually make your funny faces at the screen. So if you've actually got a see-through, you can actually see yourself. If you've got a mirror in the room, nothing better than making funny faces at yourself. So do that. Change your face, change your whole body. And by changing that, you'll change your whole sense of self, which is really, really important in terms of relaxation and getting to a state of fun. If you've got a red nose, put it on now. And possibly you'll be listening in a completely different state of being. So the whole thing of fun and red noses and letting go, and often we don't let ourselves go because we take ourselves too seriously. So I'm all for taking work seriously, but having lots of fun, but never, never take yourself too seriously. You can get into all different states of panic and anxiety and make lots more mistakes than we should be making. And of course, with all those mistakes, just take them sometimes, share them, and laugh at them. Because when you're laughing at them, things look a hell of a lot better, and you always find different ways to do different things with a good dose of humor. Something we should think about a lot in our workplace. How much fun are you having? What would happen, and I'd like maybe just to throw that out just before I finish on this, what would happen if you walked into your workplace tomorrow with a red nose on? What sort of reactions would you get from your boss and from your colleagues? Just thinking about it, probably for a lot of you, it can make you laugh out loud.
I don't think I'd get any reaction in my workplace, actually, because we do seem to spend quite a lot.
That would be a usual day for you.
Yeah, that's just another day in the Pearl Catcher's lifestyle. Is actually just having fun anyway. So we do a lot of it. But yeah, I'm with you there, Jeff. I think that the really important thing is that we say that as children we laugh on average 300 times a day. As adults, we're lucky if we laugh 15 times a day, so we lose 285 laughs, which is truly scary. And yeah, laughter is just so good for you. As you said, it relieves the stress, it brings the it makes you sort of just happy, raises your endorphins, and it's a brilliant workout. Have you ever had a really good
Absolutely. In fact, it has so many wonderful health benefits that we can't afford not to be laughing. And as I think Charlie Chaplin even said, a day without laughter is a day wasted.
Absolutely.
So when life gives you lemons, bite them and make a funny face. I like all these very serious when life gives you lemons, as we know what the actual saying is.
Absolutely.
Let's just take that and play around and have fun with even the most serious of paradigms.
So same thing again then is just give yourself your rating between 1 and 10. So how much laughter and fun, whatever fun is for you, it's different for everyone, but how much laughter and fun do you have in your life now? What's your score on that one? So we've got a 9 so far, so that's good. We've also got a lot of fun going in. So how much fun do you have in your life right now? How whether that's pure laughter, whether that's just gentle humming to yourself, what fun do you have in your life? Then finally, focus and meaning. And it starts as the first letter with the F, but we do it last because actually this is the thing that brings it all together. Is you can have lots of other bits and bobs in your things, but the thing that really makes the difference for people is that feeling motivated about what they do. About having that passion, actually having what they do linking in some way to those things that they see are important, those things that motivate them. And if you ever speak to people that are really motivated, you just know it in their voices, don't you? You can just tell instantly that this is someone who actually is really happy with what's going on, and they're really focused, and it's really, really important to them. So it is about ideally looking at what's important to you. What is it that makes your soul sing? What are those things that you're passionate about? And making sure that you have that in your life. Now, not everyone is lucky enough to have that passion at work, but if there's some way that your values can align, it's going to be much easier. Maybe you have it. There were some people I was talking to on a course last week, and actually for him it was the charity work he does out of work, so not his employed work, but having that focus in your life, that's something that adds meaning, something that's really powerful for you, and that's what really drives people. And unfortunately, sometimes in the world that we live in, it can be a little bit like this with work sometimes. We get a little bit focused on some of the negative things, and it's just all about the stuff we have to do. So for us, the real sort of rocket fuel, if you like, that we put in at the end is to give people that chance to reconnect to what they're passionate about, what really drives them, what's their purpose in life. So that's sort of our final little bit. I would like to spend a little bit more time on that. Again, I'll get you to have a think yourselves and jot down on your chart there where you are from 1 to 10. How much are you living your passion? How much focus and meaning do you have in your life? But for now, we'll kind of take you on to the summary. So we wanted to have a very quick Q&A. It may well be where we are time-wise that you might want to say some questions and we can speak to you afterwards. We'd love to get some feedback on your thoughts on the model overall. We have got 3 free videos that we can get you to sign up for, and we are going to be launching formally at the CIPD show in Olympia next week, so it'd be great if you can come and join us there. We will be, after the webinar, sending you details of all of this and how you can take part in that, and that you can win a session with one of the 3 of us to talk through your Flourish self-evaluation, either for you as a person or as an organisation, and see what that means in reality, just by giving us some good written feedback, which would be really great that we can use to move forward. So I think what I might do is be really brave now for this last few minutes and actually take the mute buttons off, because actually it's far better than having all these little conversations, is to actually take the mute buttons off and ask anyone if they've got any particular questions they would like to ask. I'll put the whole thing out there, so any particular questions anyone would like to ask any of us. Was that someone talking to us, or was that someone else where you were? I didn't quite hear that, if that was someone talking to us. Any particular questions anyone got for any of us on the model?
It's Carol here. I don't know if...
Better, I can hear you now, yep.
I don't know if anybody can hear.
Yep, I can hear you. Is that Carol? Yep, I can hear you there.
Yeah. What I love about it is that it's about whole people.
Yeah.
And that's what I just kind of like care about so much. So kind of we are people, whether we're in organisations or out of organisations, and Flourish kind of like just talks to, let's be a whole person, let's be who I am, wherever I am, whenever I am, rather than feeling I need to compartmentalise myself. So love it.
Well, thank you. That's really nice, because that's been really important to us, that it is about, if you have flourishing people, then you have flourishing organisations, and so that's why we've started with the people, because that's where it is. So it's really great to get that positive feedback. Thank you, Carol. Any other questions, or I might have to take you off mute in a minute, because it then gets very loud. But anybody else got any other questions on anything?
Hi, it's Chris here.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. I don't know much about any other models that are out there, but in comparison to other models that are out there, how does this compare?
I think the main difference for us is that it's much more holistic. So there are a lot of models that will look, say, at the health and physicality and maybe some of the stress management, resilience, mindfulness stuff. And then there'll be other models that look at different purposes. But I think this is, certainly from the research we've done, I think this is the most holistic model that brings in all aspects of what it means to be a flourishing person. Would you agree, Chaz and Jeff?
Hello?
I've lost. Are you there, Chaz?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And I know a lot of, I mentioned at the start that a lot of other organisations are looking at maybe happiness or maybe health or maybe well-being. I think the thing for me that stands out about Flourish is, as Carol said, it actually looks at the whole person and it looks at the whole thing. So it's not just, am I good at work? Am I bad at work? It's everything. It takes everything into account. And I think that for me is its strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we have researched a lot of the happiness models that exist out there. Certainly have linked it in terms of what's going on with engagement today, the well-being aspects, and we've tried to pretty much pull absolutely everything that's out there all together into one all-encompassing model that makes sense and has a flow to it, so that you get all the research behind what's going on in these fields, and it moves people onto another level. I think it moves people beyond, further, as we've talked about it, further and beyond just happiness and well-being, into something we've defined as flourishing and thriving individuals and thriving workshops, workplaces. So I think this is the value of our model, definitely.
Any one other question? We can certainly have more questions afterwards, and we'll send you an option to send some through. But any other last burning questions that anyone would like to ask whilst we're here now?
If you don't mind, I've got another question. It's Chris again.
I think there's someone else was asking a question, but I couldn't hear them. So perhaps you can.
All right, I'll leave it.
No, but as I say, if the other person can maybe put their question in the question box, I can answer it that way, and then Chris, I can answer your question whilst we're waiting to get the other response. I don't know if it was David who was asking the question, but if you can maybe just jot it down in the question box again, David, I can hopefully pick it up from there.
I can see David was talking, but I couldn't hear him clearly.
No, so if you can put it in the question box, David, I can answer you from there. So Chris, if you ask your question whilst David is typing his in, then I can go from there.
Yeah, my question was just sort of curiosity. So in an organisation, who would you be targeting with this model? Who is it that would be interested in this model?
Everyone.
No, but who can you sell it to?
I think it's looking at it in terms of different levels. So, I mean, really, where we ideally want to get to is the people at the top of the tree. So the senior managers, you know, in terms of recognising that this is important for their organisations to be successful, they need to have flourishing people. So our route ideally is going to be into the C-suite. And the top managers. It may be that for some organisations it would go through more of the HR side of things as well. But ideally for us it's that getting in at that top level, because you need to have a commitment to it. We only want to work with organisations that are truly committed to doing something about this, not I'm going to run a couple of courses here and there. Whereas it is about starting a revolution, it's about making it much more fundamental. Okay, so what I probably need to do now is to finish off. I can't hear what David is saying, so sorry about that. But what would be the last thing for us is to get some feedback from you. As you said, we will send something around afterwards, but just some initial ideas for us to help us in terms of the exhibition next week. So what are your initial impressions? Any aspects that particularly resonated with you? I think we've had a couple of responses on that. And if you were going to describe this to someone else, this model to someone else, what sort of words would you use to describe that to other people?
Shall I come in? It's Carol.
Go on, Carol.
I love the Flourish, because it just makes you think about kind of like growing, and it makes you think about growing people and growing organisations and everyone being happy together. So my kind of feedback on that would be, it's a great name for a model. There's quite a lot to remember in it.
Yep.
And I love models that I can just keep in my head.
Yeah.
And so there's quite a lot here to kind of keep in your head. But I think if people are taken through it, they'll really get it. And I like the fact that you've got images to help people remember each stage of the model. For me, that's the really crucial thing. So Flourish is fabulous, and that's what we're all, what it's all about. How do we remember all aspects of Flourish?
No, that's really useful feedback. Thanks, Carol. And I think a big part for us is we wouldn't normally be doing things by webinars. So the whole point of this is that actually face to face. When we're talking to the staff, the people involved, we're not necessarily going to go in quite so much of the theory. It'll be much more around the practical. Here are some tools that you can use now, and things that they can do straight away and take away. But it's not just about coming to one session. So for us, it's really important that they build on it. So we give them some top tips to start with, and they start the process moving through, and they build on each one, learn and embed that, and then move on to the next one. But yes, some really great feedback. Thank you there, Carol.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, if I can just put in there, I noticed that Gareth put a question in the question box, and he said that in regards to happiness, there's a proverb that says you'll be most happy doing what you are good at. Yep. So somewhere to be holistic, shouldn't skills feature somewhere?
Yep.
I'd actually say possibly not. And the reason I'd say possibly not is because we're looking with the F and the focus and the meaning, that's where we're looking at somebody doing something that resonates with their values, their beliefs, and actually what their life focus is. So in terms of skills, not so much. In terms of value,
I think we've almost used the word in the self category, personal strengths, and that's definitely something that people are examining more and more. Where do I use my key signature strengths, and where am I expressed in that sense at work to allow me to play to them and feel in control and challenged enough to be in the state of flow. So I think strengths rather than skills is probably the word we're using a lot more in the Flourish model.
That's exactly what I was going to say, actually, Jeff. Yeah, it's about that. But then it's almost like once you've got your focus and you're linking that to what I know about myself, it will be as part of that growth. What are areas I might want to grow and develop? We don't necessarily call them skills, but it's as you said, the strengths that you want to develop further. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's a fabulous model that people could maybe use for things like their personal development plans. So instead of boring PDPs. How am I going to flourish in this organisation? And, you know, in each of these areas, what do I need to do? Which kind of really builds on the positive, you know, psychology and focusing on strengths, and how my health and well-being and resilience and everything are really important, where I have laughter at work. It just strikes me as a lovely model that you could use for replace the boring old PDP.
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it, to get rid of those? I'd be a very happy bunny if we...
Carol, for that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, everyone. I do appreciate that it has taken a lot of your time up. So we'd love to see you at CIPD. I know certainly Gareth and Chris we will do, because you'll be across the aisle from us. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you there. And we will send you out. Yes, we're very excited. And we'll be sending out a follow-up email, so you can have the chance to, as I said, have one of the Skype sessions with us and to give us some formal feedback, which would be absolutely amazing. But other than that, thank you all so much for your time, and look forward to speaking to and seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.